The knocking started at 4:17 a.m. I know because I'd been staring at the ceiling for hours, counting the cracks in the plaster like I used to count my blessings, back when they were easier to find. At 66, sleep comes in fragments, brief surrenders between long stretches of wakefulness. But this knocking was different. Urgent. Violent almost. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. I grabbed my robe and hurried down the stairs of my old farmhouse, the wood groaning under my feet like it always did. Through the frosted glass of the front door, I could see a figure, tall, swaying slightly. My heart lurched. "Mom! Mom, open up!" Daniel. My son. I fumbled with the chain lock, my fingers clumsy with age and panic. When I finally yanked the door open, the cold November air hit me like a slap. But that wasn't what made me gasp. It was the sight of him. Daniel stood on my porch, his face streaked with soot, his expensive shirt torn at the collar. But it was the smell that nearly knocked me backward. Gasoline and ash, thick and choking, like he'd bathed in it. His eyes were wild, darting past me into the house, then back to the empty driveway behind him. "Daniel? What in heaven's name? Mom, listen to me." He grabbed my shoulders, and I could feel him trembling. "If anyone asks, police, insurance people, anyone, you tell them I was here. All night, since 10 o'clock. I was helping you with the furnace. It's been acting up, right? You called me, and I came over." The words tumbled out so fast I could barely process them. "The furnace? Daniel, what are you—" "Please, Mom." His voice cracked. "Just say I was here. Can you do that for me?" I'd raised this boy, changed his diapers, nursed his fevers, sat through his little league games in the sweltering heat. I knew every inflection in his voice, every micro-expression on his face. And right now, looking into his desperate eyes, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. My son was terrified. "Come inside," I whispered. He stumbled through the door, and I locked it behind him, my hands still shaking. He collapsed onto my worn sofa, the same one he used to build forts behind as a child. Now he sat there, a 42-year-old man, looking more lost than I'd ever seen him. "Tell me what happened," I said, easing into the chair across from him. "I can't. Not yet. Just, can you say I was here?" Every instinct in my body screamed that this was wrong. But this was my son, my only child, the baby I'd rocked to sleep, the teenager I'd bailed out of his small rebellions, the man I'd proudly watched open his restaurant 3 years ago. "I'll say it," I heard myself say. "But Daniel, you need to tell me the truth." He nodded, but didn't speak. Instead, he pulled out his phone with trembling hands, stared at the screen, then set it face down on the coffee table like it had burned him. "I need to shower," he muttered. "Do you still have Dad's old clothes in the attic?" "Some, yes." He disappeared upstairs, and I heard the water running. I sat in the silence of my living room, the pre-dawn darkness pressing against the windows, and tried to make sense of what had just happened. The smell of gasoline lingered in the air, mixing with the familiar sense of my home. Lavender sachets, old wood, the faint must of books. I'd been a widow for 8 years. My husband, Robert, had died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving me this farmhouse on the outskirts of Millbrook Falls, Oregon, and enough savings to live comfortably if I was careful. Daniel had his own life in town, a successful restaurant called Ember and Oak, a business partnership with Marcus Whitfield, a man I'd met only twice and hadn't particularly liked either time. My daughter-in-law, Natalie, had left Daniel 2 years ago. No children, thank goodness, though that had been a point of tension. She'd wanted them. He'd wanted to focus on the restaurant first. By the time he was ready, she was gone, filing for divorce and moving to Seattle with barely a backward glance. The water shut off upstairs. I picked up the remote and turned on the small TV in the corner, something I rarely did this early. But my hands needed something to do. The local news was just starting. A perky reporter stood in front of a scene that made my blood freeze. Devastating fire that broke out late last night at Ember and Oak, one of Millbrook Falls' most popular dining establishments. Firefighters responded to the blaze at approximately 11 p.m. But the building was already fully engulfed. The camera panned to show the wreckage. Even on my small screen, the destruction was total. Blackened walls, collapsed roof, firefighters still spraying water onto smoking rubble as the sun began to rise. 11 p.m. He'd asked me to say he was here at 10. Daniel came down the stairs, wearing his father's old flannel shirt and jeans, his hair still damp. He looked almost like himself again, except for the haunted look in his eyes. He stopped when he saw the TV. They don't know how it started yet. The reporter continued. Fire investigators will be on scene this morning. The owner, Daniel Albright, could not be reached for comment. Daniel sank back onto the sofa. Your restaurant, I whispered. Daniel, your restaurant burned down. I know. Were you there? He didn't answer. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. The news says it started at 11. You asked me to say you were here at 10. Mom, don't. I held up my hand. Don't lie to me. Were you there when it started? He covered his face with his hands. I didn't do this. I swear to you, I didn't do this. Then who did? Before he could answer, his phone buzzed on the coffee table. We both stared at it. After 3 rings, he picked it up, looked at the screen, and his face went pale. It's Marcus, he said. My partner. Answer it. He shook his head. I can't. Not yet. The phone stopped ringing. 10 seconds later, it started again. Daniel, if you're innocent, you need to... You don't understand. He stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Marcus has been... There are things you don't know about the business, about what's been happening. Then tell me. He turned to face me, and in the growing dawn light, I could see tears on his cheeks. 3 months ago, I found out Marcus was skimming money from the restaurant. A lot of money. I confronted him, told him I was going to end the partnership, buy him out or sell my share, whatever it took to get away from him. My stomach tightened. What did he say? He laughed, said I couldn't prove anything, that he'd covered his tracks. And then he said, Daniel's voice dropped to barely a whisper. He said if I tried to leave, if I tried to expose him, he'd make sure I lost everything. The restaurant, my reputation, my freedom. He said he knew people. People who could make problems disappear. You should have gone to the police. With what? I had suspicions, some irregularities in the books, but nothing concrete. Marcus is careful, Mom. He's been doing this for years, I think. Before he partnered with me. The phone rang again. Marcus Whitfield's name glowed on the screen. Let it ring, Daniel said. I need time to think. I need to figure out what he's planning. But I was already thinking, already seeing the pattern. A restaurant burning down at 11 p.m. My son showing up at 4 in the morning, reeking of gasoline. A business partner with motive and connections. He's framing you, I said quietly. Isn't he? That's what this is. Daniel nodded slowly. I think so. I think he set the fire and now he's going to make it look like I did it. Insurance fraud, maybe. Or just to destroy me because I threatened to expose him. Then we need to prove it. How? I don't have evidence of the embezzlement. And now I show up at your house at 4 in the morning, asking you to lie about where I was. I said I would tell people you were here. I didn't say I wouldn't find out the truth. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Mom, this isn't some puzzle you can solve. Marcus is dangerous. If he's willing to burn down his own business, then he's desperate, I interrupted. And desperate people make mistakes. The phone stopped ringing. In the silence that followed, I heard a car engine in the distance, growing closer. Daniel heard it too. He went to the window, pulled back the curtain just enough to see out. It's a police car, he said, his voice tight. They're turning into your driveway. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my voice steady. Then we stick to the story. You were here all night helping me with the furnace. We worked on it until late, and you fell asleep on the sofa. Do you understand? Mom, do you understand? He nodded. The police car stopped in front of the house. 2 officers got out. One I recognized as Sheriff Tom Bradley, who'd been at Robert's funeral. The other was younger, a deputy I didn't know. Let me do the talking, I said. And Daniel, whatever happens next, we're going to find out what really happened. I promise you that. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. You sound so sure. I am. I straightened my robe and walked to the door. I didn't survive 66 years by letting bullies win, and I'm not about to start now. The knock came firm and official. I opened the door, putting on my best concerned neighbor expression. "Sheriff Bradley," I said warmly. "What brings you out here so early?" He touched the brim of his hat, but his eyes were serious. "Morning, Mrs. Albright. Sorry to disturb you, but we're looking for your son, Daniel." "Is he here?" Behind me, I heard Daniel stand up from the sofa. "He is," I said calmly. "He's been here since last night. Is something wrong?" The sheriff's eyes moved past me to Daniel. "Son, I'm afraid your restaurant burned down last night. We need to ask you some questions about your whereabouts." Daniel stepped forward, and I felt a surge of pride at how steady his voice was. "I was here, Sheriff, with my mom, all night." The younger deputy pulled out a notepad. "What time did you arrive, Mr. Albright?" "Around 10, Daniel said, exactly as we'd agreed. "My mom called about her furnace acting up." Sheriff Bradley's gaze shifted to me. "That right, Mrs. Albright?" I met his eyes without flinching. "That's right. The furnace has been temperamental lately. Gets cold out here at night, you know." Daniel came over to take a look at it. "And he stayed all night?" "Well, it took a while to figure out the problem. And by the time he finished, it was late. I told him he might as well sleep on the sofa rather than drive back to town." The sheriff nodded slowly, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. He'd been doing this job for 30 years. He knew when something didn't smell right. "Mr. Albright," he said, "we're going to need you to come down to the station to make a formal statement. Fire investigators found some irregularities at the scene." "What kind of irregularities?" I asked before Daniel could respond. The sheriff hesitated. "Evidence suggests the fire may not have been accidental. We're treating this as a potential arson investigation." The word hung in the air like smoke. Arson. Daniel's phone buzzed again in his pocket. This time, it wasn't Marcus calling. It was a text message. I could see the screen from where I stood. "We need to talk. Now. Don't say anything to the police until we do." Daniel looked at me. In his eyes I saw fear. Yes, but also something else. A plea. A question. I gave him the smallest nod. Then I turned back to the sheriff with my best grandmother smile. "Of course he'll come down to the station, Sheriff. He'll tell you everything he knows. But first, would you gentlemen like some coffee?" I was just about to make a pot. The sheriff's expression softened slightly. "That's kind of you, ma'am, but we need to get back. Mr. Albright, if you'll come with us." "I'll drive him myself," I said quickly. "Give us 20 minutes to get dressed properly and we'll meet you there." The sheriff considered this, then nodded. 20 minutes. Don't make me come looking for you, son." "He'll be there," I promised. After they left, I closed the door and leaned against it. Daniel was staring at his phone, at Marcus's message. "He knows they're investigating," I said. "He's trying to control the narrative." "What do I do?" I thought for a moment, my mind racing through possibilities. "You go to the station. You tell them exactly what we said, that you were here. But you don't mention Marcus yet. Not until we know more." "And then what?" "Then," I said, pulling my own phone from my robe pocket, "you let your 66-year-old mother do what she does best." "What's that?" I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm going to find out exactly who Marcus Whitfield is, what he's been doing, and how he's planning to destroy you. And when I have that information, we're going to take everything he has." Daniel shook his head in wonder. "You sound like you've done this before." "I haven't," I admitted. "But I've read enough mystery novels to know how these things work. And I'm not about to let some criminal take down my son." Outside, the sun was fully up now, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt like a countdown. Somewhere in Millbrook Falls, Marcus Whitfield was making his next move. And I needed to be ready for it. Because whether he knew it or not, he'd just made a fatal mistake. He'd underestimated a mother's love and her determination to protect her child, no matter what it cost. Daniel left for the police station at 7:30, driving his own car despite my offer to accompany him. He needed to appear cooperative, confident, innocent. A middle-aged man hiding behind his mother's skirts wouldn't inspire trust. I watched him pull out of the driveway, his father's flannel shirt visible through the car window, and felt my chest tighten with worry. But worry wouldn't solve anything. Action would. I showered quickly, dressed in my most respectable outfit, navy slacks and a cream cardigan, and sat down at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my laptop. Robert used to joke that I was the only woman over 60 who could navigate the internet better than most teenagers. He'd been proud of that, of how I'd refused to let technology leave me behind. Now, I was grateful for it. I started with the basics. Marcus Whitfield, Millbrook Falls, Oregon. His social media profiles appeared first. Carefully curated images of a successful restaurateur. 47 years old, according to his LinkedIn. Before partnering with Daniel 3 years ago, he'd owned a bistro in Portland that had closed under mysterious circumstances. I clicked deeper, finding an old news article about a fire at that establishment too. The insurance company had investigated but ultimately paid out. The fire had been ruled accidental. My stomach churned. 1 restaurant fire might be an accident. 2 was a pattern. I kept digging, taking notes in the small spiral notebook I always kept in my kitchen drawer. Marcus had been married once, divorced 10 years ago. No children. His ex-wife's name was Aretha Whitfield, now Aretha Harmon, remarried and living in Eugene. I wrote down her name. People who'd been burned by someone often had stories to tell. The front door opened without warning. I jumped, nearly spilling my coffee. But it wasn't Daniel. It was my next-door neighbor, Patricia Hendricks, letting herself in with the spare key I'd given her years ago for emergencies. "Joanna!" She rushed in, her face flushed with excitement. "I just heard about Daniel's restaurant. Is he all right? Were you watching the news?" Patricia was 72, a widow like me, and the closest thing I had to a best friend in Millbrook Falls. She was also the biggest gossip in 3 counties. Whatever I told her would be all over town by lunch. "He's fine," I said carefully. "He was here with me when it happened, actually, working on my furnace." "Oh, thank goodness." She put a hand to her chest. "I was so worried. They're saying it might be arson, Joanna. Arson. Can you imagine? Who would do such a thing?" "I don't know," I said, which was mostly true. I suspected, but I didn't know. "The police are investigating." Patricia sat down uninvited, leaning forward conspiratorially. "Well, I heard from Marjorie at the post office, who heard from her nephew who's a deputy, that they found evidence of accelerants. Multiple points of origin. Someone wanted that building to burn, Joanna. Multiple points of origin. That meant the fire was deliberately set in several places to ensure total destruction." My hands tightened around my coffee mug. "That's terrible," I managed. "And you know what else?" Patricia lowered her voice. "I heard that Marcus Whitfield was out of town last night. Drove to Salem for a supplier meeting, supposedly. Left around 6 and didn't get back until after midnight. Very convenient timing, if you ask me. An alibi. Marcus had made sure he was far away when the fire started." "Patricia," I said slowly, "how well do you know Marcus?" She wrinkled her nose. "Not well. He's not exactly the friendly type. Comes across as slick, you know? Like a used car salesman in expensive clothes. I never understood why Daniel went into business with him. Did Daniel ever mention any problems with the partnership?" Patricia's eyes sharpened with interest. "Why do you ask?" I backtracked quickly. "Just wondering. With the fire and all, I'm trying to understand what might have happened." "Well," she said, settling in, "I do know that Janet Peterson, you remember her, she works at the bank, mentioned a few months ago that there were some unusual transactions on the restaurant's accounts. She couldn't give details, of course, client confidentiality and all that, but she seemed concerned." My pulse quickened. Janet Peterson. Another name to add to my list. "Patricia, I appreciate you checking on us, but I should really—" My phone rang. Daniel's number. "Excuse me," I said, standing up. Patricia took the hint, though reluctantly. "Call me if you need anything," she said, heading for the door. "And Joanna, be careful. If someone really did burn down that restaurant deliberately, they're dangerous." After she left, I answered the call. "Daniel? What's happening?" His voice was tight with stress. "They kept me for 3 hours. Asking the same questions over and over. Where was I? What time did I arrive at your place? Did I have any financial difficulties? Was the restaurant insured? Is it? Insured? For $800,000. And Mom, here's the thing. I found out this morning that Marcus increased the policy 6 months ago. Doubled it without telling me. I'm on the paperwork as co-owner, so my signature is there. But I never actually signed those documents. Forgery. My mind raced. Did you tell the police? No. I didn't know about it until I called our insurance agent after I left the station. I wanted to start the claim process. That's when she told me about the increase and sent me copies of the documents. Mom, that's not my signature. It's close, but it's not mine. Can you prove that? Maybe. I'd need a handwriting expert, but that takes time and money, and in the meantime, I look guilty as sin. I heard voices in the background, and Daniel's breathing quickened. Mom, I have to go. Marcus just pulled into the parking lot. He's coming toward me. Don't talk to him alone. Stay in public. I have to hear what he has to say. He hung up. I stared at my phone, my heart hammering. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I called Sheriff Bradley's office. Sheriff's Department. How may I help you? This is Joanna Albright. My son, Daniel Albright, just left your station. I believe he might be in danger. What kind of danger, ma'am? His business partner, Marcus Whitfield, is meeting him right now. I have reason to believe Mr. Whitfield may be involved in the fire. There was a pause. Mrs. Albright, those are serious allegations. Do you have evidence? Not yet. But I'm working on it. Another pause. Longer this time. I'll have a deputy swing by the station parking lot. But ma'am, you need to be very careful about making accusations without proof. Slander is a serious matter. So is arson, I said, and hung up. I sat there for a moment, my hands shaking. Then I picked up my laptop and continued my research, this time focusing on the fire at Marcus's previous restaurant in Portland. I found the insurance investigator's report, public record, buried in county documents. The fire had started in the kitchen, supposedly from a faulty gas line. But there were notes about irregularities, suspicious timing, and a payout that the investigator had recommended denying. Yet the claim had been paid anyway. Someone had overruled the investigator. But why? I was still reading when my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Marcus says we need to meet tonight. His lawyer's office. 8 p.m. Says he has information that will clear everything up. I don't trust him, but I don't know what else to do. I typed back quickly. Don't go alone. I'm coming with you. Mom. No. This could be dangerous. Exactly why I'm coming. 8 p.m. I'll meet you there. I didn't wait for him to argue. Instead, I opened a new browser tab and searched for Marcus's ex-wife. Aretha Harmon lived in Eugene, about an hour's drive from Millbrook Falls. Her Facebook profile showed a woman with kind eyes and a careful smile, the smile of someone who'd learned to guard herself. I sent her a private message. Mrs. Harmon, my name is Joanna Albright. My son was Marcus Whitfield's business partner. I need to speak with you urgently about Marcus. It's a matter of safety. Please call me. I included my phone number. Within 10 minutes, she called. Mrs. Albright. Her voice was cautious. You said this was about Marcus? Yes. His restaurant burned down last night. My son is being investigated for arson, but I believe Marcus is framing him. Silence. Then, that sounds like Marcus. So you'll help me? I'll do better than that. I'll tell you everything. But not over the phone. Can you come to Eugene? I looked at the clock. It was just past 11. I can be there by 1. There's a coffee shop on Willamette Street. Allegro Coffee. I'll be there at 1:15. After she hung up, I grabbed my purse and keys. But as I reached for the front door, I noticed something that stopped me cold. The mailbox flag was up. I hadn't gotten the mail yet today. The postal carrier usually came around noon. Someone else had been to my mailbox. I walked outside, my skin prickling with unease. Inside the mailbox was a single envelope, unmarked, no stamp, hand-delivered. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a photograph. It showed Daniel and me standing in my living room early this morning, clearly visible through my front window. We were looking at his phone, the TV showing images of the fire in the background. The angle suggested the photo had been taken from the trees at the edge of my property. Someone had been watching us, photographing us. There was no note, no message. The threat was clear enough without one. I looked around my property, suddenly feeling exposed. The farmhouse sat on 5 acres, surrounded by woods on 3 sides. Anyone could hide in those trees. Anyone could be watching right now. My phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press the green button. Mrs. Albright. The voice was smooth, educated, unfamiliar. I apologize for the dramatic delivery, but I needed to get your attention. Who is this? Someone who's been watching your son for a while now. And you, as of this morning. I have to say, I'm impressed by your quick thinking with the sheriff. Most mothers would have panicked. My blood turned to ice. What do you want? I want you to stop investigating. Stop asking questions. Stop trying to help Daniel. He's in a situation he created, and he needs to face the consequences. He didn't start that fire. Can you prove that? The voice remained pleasant, almost amused. Because from where I'm standing, he's the one with motive, opportunity, and now an alibi that his own mother is providing. That's conspiracy, Mrs. Albright. You could go to prison for that. Are you threatening me? I'm advising you. Daniel made bad choices. He got involved with the wrong people. The best thing you can do for him now is step back and let this play out. And if I don't? The voice hardened just slightly. Then that photograph will be the least of your worries. You live alone on this property. Lots of woods around. Accidents happen to elderly people all the time, especially ones who don't know when to mind their own business. The line went dead. I stood there, the envelope in one hand, my phone in the other, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt genuine fear. Not for Daniel, for myself. Someone was watching me, following me, warning me, and that someone wasn't Marcus. The voice had been too young, too smooth. Marcus had hired help, professional help. I went back inside, locked every door and window, and sat down at my kitchen table. The photograph lay in front of me, Daniel's frightened face captured in glossy detail. I should have been terrified. Part of me was. But the larger part, the part that had raised a child alone after Robert died, the part that had survived loneliness and doubt and fear, that part was getting angry. They thought they could scare me into submission, threaten an old woman into silence. They were wrong. I picked up my phone and called Daniel. Change of plans. I'm going to Eugene this afternoon. I'll be back by 6. Don't meet with Marcus tonight without me, and don't go anywhere alone. Stay in public places. Mom, what's happened? I'll explain later. Just promise me you'll be careful. After he promised, I grabbed my purse, checked that my phone was fully charged, and headed for my car. As I backed out of the driveway, I checked my rearview mirror obsessively, looking for any sign I was being followed. The road behind me stayed empty, but as I drove toward Eugene, toward answers and toward Aretha Harmon, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. That somewhere in those trees, or in a car I hadn't noticed, or through a camera lens I couldn't see, someone was tracking my every move, and they were waiting to see what I would do next. The drive to Eugene took exactly 57 minutes. I knew because I watched the clock the entire way, splitting my attention between the road ahead and the rearview mirror behind. 3 times I thought I saw the same silver sedan following me. 3 times I told myself I was being paranoid. But paranoia is just preparation when the threats are real. Allegro Coffee sat on a corner of Willamette Street, a cozy brick building with large windows and the smell of roasted beans thick in the air. I found parking 2 blocks away and walked. My purse clutched tight against my side. My phone in my pocket with 911 already dialed except for the final digit. Aretha Harmon was waiting at a corner table, exactly as she'd promised. She was younger than I expected. Mid-40s, with auburn hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, and eyes that assessed me carefully as I approached. Mrs. Albright? Please call me Joanna. I sat down across from her, and a waitress appeared almost immediately. I ordered tea I didn't want, just to have something to do with my hands. Aretha waited until the waitress left before speaking. You said Marcus is trying to frame your son. Yes, his restaurant burned down last night. The police think it's arson, but I believe Marcus set the fire and is positioning Daniel to take the fall. She nodded slowly, like this confirmed something she already knew. That's his pattern. Pattern? Marcus doesn't just burn bridges, Joanna. He burns buildings, relationships, lives. He's been doing it for as long as I've known him. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through photos, then turned the screen to face me. It showed a newspaper article from 12 years ago. Local business destroyed in suspicious fire. The business was a small boutique hotel in Bend, Oregon. The owner was listed as Marcus Whitfield. This was before the Portland restaurant? I asked. Before Portland, before me, before everything. Aretha's voice was bitter. Marcus has a system. He opens a business, runs it for 2 or 3 years, then burns it down and collects the insurance. He's done it at least 4 times that I know of, probably more. Then why hasn't he been caught? Because he's careful. He always has partners or co-owners who look guilty. He always has an alibi. And he always makes sure the fire looks like it could have been an accident or someone else's fault. She leaned forward. When we were married, he tried to get me to take out a life insurance policy for $2 million. Said it was for our future, for our security. I refused. 6 months later, I filed for divorce. The tea arrived, but I didn't touch it. You think he would have killed you? I think I'm alive because I left when I did. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up her coffee. Marcus is a sociopath, Joanna. He doesn't feel guilt or remorse. He sees people as tools, as means to an end. And when a tool stops being useful, he discards it. Why didn't you go to the police? I tried. After the divorce, I told them everything I suspected. They investigated. But Marcus had covered his tracks perfectly. No evidence, no witnesses, just the paranoid accusations of a bitter ex-wife. They told me to move on with my life. She laughed without humor. So I did. I remarried, changed my name, moved to Eugene. I thought I was safe. But 6 months ago, Marcus called me. Out of the blue after 10 years of silence. He said he wanted to apologize, to make amends. I hung up on him. Then he started showing up places. Outside my office, at my gym, in the grocery store parking lot. Never threatening, never aggressive. Just there, watching. A chill ran down my spine. Did you report it? Stalking laws require proof of intent to harm. Marcus is too smart for that. He'd just smile and say he was in the neighborhood. What a coincidence. The police couldn't do anything. I thought about the photograph in my mailbox. The phone call with the smooth-voiced stranger. He has people working for him. Someone threatened me this morning. Aretha's face paled. Then you need to be very careful. Marcus doesn't make threats himself. He hires people to do his dirty work. Usually someone with a criminal record who needs money. Someone disposable. If things go wrong, they're the ones who take the fall, not Marcus. Do you know who he uses? A man named Kyle Brenner. Ex-military, dishonorable discharge for assault. Marcus used him when we were married. Intimidation, surveillance, once even breaking into someone's office to plant evidence. Kyle's been arrested twice, but never convicted. He's smart, and he's loyal to Marcus because Marcus pays well. Kyle Brenner. I committed the name to memory. Aretha. I need evidence. Something that proves Marcus's pattern, his methods. Something I can take to the police or the insurance company. She hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a small USB drive. After the divorce, I kept copies of everything I could find. Bank statements showing suspicious transfers, emails between Marcus and insurance adjusters, text messages with Kyle Brenner. It's all circumstantial. Nothing that would hold up in court by itself. But if you're building a case, if you can connect these old crimes to what's happening now. I took the drive with trembling fingers. Why are you helping me? You could have walked away, stayed safe. Because I'm tired of being afraid. Her voice cracked. And because maybe if we stop him now, no one else has to go through what I did, what your son is going through. We talked for another 20 minutes. She gave me details about Marcus's methods, how he'd study insurance policies for months before acting, how he'd create paper trails that implicated others, how he'd establish alibis that seemed airtight. She told me about his charm, his ability to manipulate people into trusting him, believing him, even defending him. He'll have people in Millbrook Falls who think he's wonderful, she warned. Pillars of the community who'll vouch for his character. He collects them like shields. As I prepared to leave, she grabbed my hand. Joanna, promise me something. Whatever you do, don't confront Marcus directly. Don't let him know you're investigating. The moment he realizes you're a threat, he'll move against you, and he won't hesitate just because you're Daniel's mother. I promised, though I wasn't sure I could keep it. The drive back to Millbrook Falls took longer. Traffic was heavy, and my mind was racing with everything Aretha had told me. The USB drive felt like it was burning a hole in my purse. I needed to look at what was on it. Needed to figure out how to connect Marcus's past crimes to the present. But first, I needed to stop Daniel from meeting with Marcus tonight. I called him at 4:30, as I crossed back into Millbrook Falls County. Daniel, you can't go to that meeting. Mom, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for an hour. My phone was on silent. Listen to me. No, you listen. I went by the restaurant site this afternoon. The fire investigator was there, and he let me walk through what's left of the building. Daniel's voice was shaking. Mom, they found something in the back office. A gas can, with my fingerprints on it. I nearly drove off the road. What? My fingerprints are on a gas can that was used to start the fire. They're saying it proves I was there, that I set it. Did you ever have a gas can at the restaurant? Yes, for the backup generator. But that can was in the storage shed, not inside the building. And I haven't touched it in months. Someone had moved it, planted it. Daniel, Marcus is framing you. I have proof. It doesn't matter what proof you have. My prints are on that can. The fire investigator told the sheriff, and the sheriff told me I shouldn't leave town. I'm going to be arrested, Mom. Maybe as soon as tomorrow. No, this couldn't be happening. The meeting tonight? Is it still on? Yes. Marcus's lawyer's office at 8. Marcus says he has information that will help me, that will explain everything. It's a trap. Maybe. But what choice do I have? If I don't go, I look guilty. If I do go, maybe I find out what he's planning, how he's doing this. I pulled into a gas station parking lot needing to think. I'm coming with you. Mom, I'm not asking permission. I'll meet you at the lawyer's office at 7:45. Do not go in without me. After we hung up, I sat in my car and tried to organize my thoughts. The gas can was devastating evidence, physical proof that Daniel had handled the accelerant. Even if we could prove Marcus had moved it, planted it, the fingerprints were real. A jury might believe Daniel had been careless, had left evidence behind. Unless we could prove Marcus's pattern, unless we could show this was exactly what he'd done before. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop and started reading through the files. Bank statements showing large cash withdrawals just before Marcus's previous fires. Emails with insurance adjusters that were overly friendly, almost collusive. Text messages with Kyle Brenner that used coded language but clearly referred to surveillance and intimidation. And then I found something that made my breath catch. A recorded phone conversation between Marcus and someone named JP. The audio file was dated 3 months ago, right around the time Daniel said he'd confronted Marcus about the embezzlement. I plugged in my earbuds and listened. Marcus's voice was unmistakable. Problem is Albright. He's asking too many questions about the books. Can you smooth it over? The other voice was older, gravelly. Not this time. He's got his accountant looking at everything. We need to act fast. Same play as Portland? Better. This time we make him the fall guy. His prints are all over the business. We just need to create the right circumstances. What about the old lady, his mother? Marcus laughed. What about her? She's nobody. If she gets in the way, Kyle can handle it. The conversation continued, laying out the plan in horrifying detail. The insurance increase, the staged embezzlement to create motive, the fire that would destroy the evidence. And if Daniel became too much of a problem, Kyle would convince him to take the blame or disappear entirely. I sat there in my car, listening to them discuss destroying my son like he was a problem to be solved, and felt rage building in my chest. Not panic, not fear. Pure, cold fury. They'd underestimated both of us. They thought Daniel would be easy to frame, easy to break. They thought I'd be easy to intimidate into silence. But they were wrong. I copied the audio file to my phone, along with the most damning documents from the USB drive. Then I called someone I never thought I'd call. Natalie, Daniel's ex-wife. She answered on the third ring. Joanna? Is everything all right? No. Daniel's restaurant burned down, and he's being framed for arson. I need your help. There was a long pause. Why would I help Daniel? We've been divorced for 2 years. Because despite everything that happened between you two, I know you're not a bad person. And because if Daniel goes to prison for something he didn't do, it'll destroy him. Please, Natalie, just hear me out. Another pause. Then, what do you need? Daniel's meeting with Marcus tonight at 8. I think Marcus is going to try to get Daniel to confess or say something incriminating or maybe even do something worse. I need witnesses. I need people there who Marcus doesn't expect. You want me to crash the meeting? Yes, and I want you to record everything that happens. Marcus doesn't know about Aretha Harmon's evidence yet. If we can get him to admit something, to slip up even slightly, we might be able to prove the pattern. Natalie was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, I'll be there. But Joanna? If this goes wrong, if Marcus really is as dangerous as you're saying, we could all be in trouble. I know. But if we don't act now, Daniel goes to prison. Or worse. Worse? I thought about the conversation I'd just heard, about Kyle Brenner, and how easily Marcus had discussed making Daniel disappear. Just be there, I said, and be careful. At 7:30, I arrived at the address Marcus had given Daniel. It was a small office building on the edge of downtown Millbrook Falls, the kind of place that housed accountants and insurance agents and lawyers who handled wills and property disputes. The building was mostly dark, just a few lights on the second floor. Daniel pulled up 5 minutes later. He looked exhausted, his face drawn with stress. Mom, you shouldn't be here. Too late. I'm here, and I'm staying. I showed him my phone, the audio file queued up. Marcus planned this 3 months ago. He and someone named JP, probably the lawyer we're about to meet, and they have a man named Kyle Brenner who does their dirty work. Daniel's face went white. You recorded this? Aretha Harmon did, Marcus's ex-wife. She's been collecting evidence on him for years. Then we take this to the police and say what? That we have a recording of unknown origin that might be Marcus but might not be? That we have circumstantial evidence from a bitter ex-wife? Daniel, we need more. We need Marcus to admit something tonight, on record, in front of witnesses. What witnesses? A car door closed behind us. We both turned. Natalie stood there, dressed in black jeans and a leather jacket, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked older than I remembered, harder. Divorce had changed her. Natalie? Daniel's voice was strangled. What are you doing here? Your mother called me, said you needed help. She walked toward us, her expression unreadable. I almost didn't come. After everything that happened between us, after how you chose that restaurant over our marriage. Natalie, I'm sorry. I'm not here for an apology. I'm here because, despite everything, I don't want to see you go to prison for something you didn't do. She looked at me. What's the plan? Before I could answer, the building's front door opened. A man stood silhouetted in the doorway. Tall, well-dressed, probably in his 60s. Mr. Albright? He called out. I'm James Patterson, Marcus's attorney. We're ready for you upstairs. Daniel looked at me, then at Natalie, then back at me. Last chance to back out, Mom. Not a chance, I said. The three of us walked toward the building together, toward whatever trap Marcus had laid. But this time, Marcus would discover something he hadn't planned for. He'd discover that a mother protecting her child is the most dangerous creature on earth, and he was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The lawyer's office was on the second floor, accessed by a narrow staircase that creaked under our feet. James Patterson led the way, his expensive shoes clicking against the worn wood. He didn't seem surprised that Daniel had brought guests, which immediately put me on edge. Either Marcus had anticipated this, or Patterson was better at hiding his reactions than most lawyers. The office itself was modest. Dark wood furniture, law books lining the walls, a large desk with 2 chairs in front of it, and a small conference table near the window. Marcus sat at that table, looking relaxed in a charcoal suit, a bottle of water in front of him. He stood when we entered, and I got my first good look at the man who was trying to destroy my son. Marcus Whitfield was handsome in a practiced way. Salt and pepper hair styled perfectly, a smile that showed expensive dental work, eyes that assessed each of us in turn. When his gaze landed on me, something flickered there. Recognition, maybe. Or calculation. "Daniel," he said warmly, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming. And you brought your mother. How thoughtful." Daniel didn't shake his hand. "You said you had information." "I do. But first," Marcus's eyes moved to Natalie. "I don't believe we've met." "Natalie Albright," she said coolly. "Daniel's ex-wife." "Ah." Marcus's smile widened. "The one who got away. Daniel mentioned you a few times. Said letting you go was his biggest regret." "Let's skip the pleasantries," I said, my voice sharper than intended. "You asked Daniel here for a reason." "What is it?" Patterson gestured to the chairs around the conference table. "Please sit. This won't take long." We sat, Daniel between Natalie and me, the three of us on one side of the table facing Marcus and Patterson. It felt like a negotiation, or an interrogation. Maybe both. Marcus took a sip of water, taking his time. "Daniel, I want to start by saying how devastated I am about the restaurant. Ember and Oak was my dream as much as yours." "Was it?" Daniel's voice was tight. "Because from where I'm sitting, you seem awfully calm for someone who just lost his business." "I'm calm because I have faith in the insurance process, and because I know the truth will come out." Marcus leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Daniel, I know you've been under a lot of stress lately. The divorce, the financial pressures of keeping the restaurant afloat, the disagreements we've had about the direction of the business, disagreements you caused by stealing from our accounts." Daniel interrupted. Patterson held up a hand. "Mr. Albright, I'd be careful about making accusations like that without proof." "I have proof," Daniel said. "My accountant has been going through the books." "Your accountant found some accounting irregularities," Marcus corrected smoothly, "which I explained to you at the time. Different vendors, different payment schedules. Nothing sinister, just good business practice. You doubled the insurance policy without telling me." "I increased the insurance policy to protect both of us. The restaurant was worth more than the original coverage. If something happened, and tragically something did, we needed adequate protection." Marcus spread his hands. "I thought you'd be grateful. You forged my signature." Patterson pulled out a folder. "We have the signed documents right here, your signature, properly witnessed and notarized. Are you claiming you didn't sign these?" Daniel looked at the papers, and I saw doubt flicker across his face. The signature was nearly perfect. If I hadn't known better, I would have believed it was his. "This is why we asked you here tonight," Marcus said, his voice gentle now, almost sympathetic. "Daniel, I think you need help. The stress, the financial pressure, the guilt over your marriage failing, it's clearly affected your judgment, your memory. You're making accusations that don't make sense, claiming you didn't sign documents that clearly have your signature." "What are you saying?" I demanded. "I'm saying Daniel needs support. Professional support." Marcus looked at me with what appeared to be genuine concern. "Mrs. Albright, has your son seemed unstable lately? Forgetful? Prone to paranoid thoughts?" The implication hit me like cold water. They were trying to paint Daniel as mentally unfit, as someone whose testimony couldn't be trusted. "My son is perfectly sound," I said. "Of course you'd say that. You're his mother." Patterson pulled out another document, but the evidence suggests otherwise. Daniel has been making increasingly erratic decisions, accusing his business partner of theft without proof, claiming documents he signed aren't his, and now we have his fingerprints on the accelerant used to burn down his own restaurant. "That gas can was planted," Daniel said. "Or," Marcus countered gently, "you don't remember using it. Stress-induced amnesia is a real phenomenon, Daniel. Sometimes when people do things they're ashamed of, things they can't reconcile with their self-image, their minds protect them by blocking out the memories." Natalie spoke up suddenly. "This is ridiculous. Daniel wouldn't burn down his own restaurant. No offense, Ms. Albright, but you divorced him 2 years ago. You don't really know what he's capable of anymore." Marcus's voice remained sympathetic, reasonable. "Look, I don't want to see Daniel go to prison. That's why I asked him here tonight. I want to help. Help how? I asked suspiciously. Patterson slid a new document across the table. We propose that Daniel voluntarily commit himself for psychiatric evaluation. 30 days at a private facility. During that time, we'll work with the insurance company and the police to explain that Daniel was suffering from a mental health crisis. With proper documentation of his condition, we can likely get the charges reduced or even dismissed on grounds of diminished capacity. In exchange for what? Daniel asked. In exchange for you signing over your share of the insurance claim to Marcus, I said, reading between the lines. That's what this is really about. Marcus had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. The insurance payout is significant. With the business destroyed, someone needs to manage those funds. And given Daniel's current situation, I'm the logical choice. You're trying to steal $800,000, Natalie said flatly. I'm trying to save my partner from prison, Marcus corrected. The psychiatric defense only works if Daniel actually gets treatment. And yes, during that treatment, I'll need power of attorney to handle the business affairs. It's a reasonable arrangement that protects everyone. Except Daniel, I said. Patterson's expression hardened slightly. The alternative is that Daniel gets arrested, probably tomorrow, and faces 15 to 20 years for arson and insurance fraud. Is that what you want for your son, Mrs. Albright? The room fell silent. Daniel sat rigid beside me, his hands clenched into fists on the table. Natalie was pale but steady, her jaw set. And across from us, Marcus waited with infinite patience, like a spider watching flies approach its web. Can we have a moment to discuss this privately? I asked. Of course, Marcus said. Take all the time you need. Patterson and I will step out. After they left, the three of us sat in tense silence for a moment. Then Daniel spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Maybe I should do it. What? Natalie and I said simultaneously. 30 days in a facility versus 20 years in prison? That's not a hard choice. It's a trap, I said urgently. Daniel, once you sign yourself in for psychiatric treatment, once you give Marcus power of attorney, you'll have no legal standing. He'll take the insurance money and disappear, and you'll be stuck in a facility with no way to prove you were framed. But I don't have proof. My prints are on that gas can. The signature on the insurance documents looks real. Everything points to me. He looked at me with desperate eyes. Mom, what if they're right? What if I did do something and can't remember? What if the stress— Stop. I grabbed his hand. Daniel Michael Albright, look at me. You did not burn down that restaurant. You're not having memory problems. You're being manipulated by a professional con artist who's done this before. How do you know? I pulled out my phone and played the audio file from the USB drive. Marcus's voice filled the small office, casually discussing how to frame Daniel, how to make him the fall guy, how to use the insurance money to fund Marcus's next venture. When it finished, Daniel was shaking. Where did you get this? Marcus's ex-wife. She's been documenting his crimes for years. I looked at both of them. We're not accepting his deal. We're going to expose him. With a recording that might not be admissible in court? Natalie asked. Joanna, I want to help, but we need a real plan. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Nice recording. Too bad you'll never get to use it. Leave the building now and go straight to your car. If you look back, if you try to go to the police tonight, Daniel's body will be found in his apartment tomorrow morning. Apparent suicide. Guilt over the fire. Very tragic. My blood turned to ice. I showed the text to Daniel and Natalie. They're watching us, Natalie whispered. Right now. I looked at the window. The office overlooked the parking lot, but the glass was dark, reflective. Anyone with binoculars from a nearby building could see inside. Or maybe there were cameras in this office that Marcus had access to. We need to leave, Daniel said, standing up. If they're threatening to— Sit down. My voice was sharp enough that he obeyed. If we leave now, scared and compliant, they win. They'll know they can control us with threats. We need to change the game. How? Natalie asked. I thought fast, my mind racing through possibilities. Then I remembered something Aretha had said. Marcus collects community shields, people who'll vouch for his character. Who in this town has influence? I asked. Who could Marcus not afford to alienate? Mayor Herman, Daniel said. She's been talking about running for state senate. Very concerned with her image. Does she know Marcus? She was at the restaurant's opening, gave a speech about local businesses strengthening the community. Marcus donated to her campaign. Call her, I said. Right now. Tell her you need to speak with her urgently about a matter involving Marcus Whitfield and potential insurance fraud. Mom, it's 8:30 at night. Politicians always answer calls about potential scandals, especially ones that might involve their donors. I pulled up the mayor's office number online and handed Daniel my phone. Do it. He made the call, stumbling through an explanation. I could hear the mayor's assistant trying to put him off, but Daniel mentioned Marcus's name and insurance fraud in the same sentence, and suddenly the mayor herself was on the line. Tomorrow morning, Daniel said after hanging up. 9 a.m. at her office. She wants to hear everything. A knock on the door made us all jump. Marcus and Patterson came back in, their expressions expectant. Have you made a decision? Patterson asked. Yes, I said before Daniel could speak. We need more time. This is a major decision that will affect my son's entire life. We'll give you our answer tomorrow afternoon. Marcus's pleasant expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. I'm afraid the offer expires tonight. The police are moving fast. By tomorrow, it may be too late. Then it's too late, I said, standing up. Daniel isn't signing anything tonight. Mrs. Albright, Patterson began. We're done here. I looked at Marcus directly. You made a mistake when you threatened my son. And you made an even bigger mistake when you threatened me. We'll show ourselves out. I walked toward the door, Natalie and Daniel behind me. As I reached for the handle, Marcus spoke, his voice no longer warm. I tried to do this the easy way. I turned back. Is that a threat? It's a fact. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with careful precision. You're a 66-year-old widow living alone on a property surrounded by woods. Daniel is facing prison time. Ms. Albright. He nodded at Natalie. You're a family law attorney with a reputation to maintain. You really want to get involved in this? Actually, Natalie said coolly, I specialize in cases where one party tries to manipulate or gaslight the other. It's kind of my thing. Marcus's smile disappeared entirely. You have 24 hours to reconsider. After that, I can't guarantee your safety, any of you. We left without another word, but I could feel Marcus's eyes on us all the way down the stairs. As we emerged onto the street, I looked around carefully. No sign of the silver sedan. No obvious surveillance. But that didn't mean we weren't being watched. My car, I said quietly. All of us. Now. We drove in silence for 3 blocks before Natalie spoke. They're really going to come after us. I know. Joanna, I have a daughter. She's 5. She lives with me. Natalie's voice cracked slightly. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen, I said with more confidence than I felt. We're going to the police station right now. We're filing a report about the threats, and we're giving them copies of everything Aretha gave me. The recording isn't enough, Daniel said. You heard them. My prints are on that gas can. The signature looks real. Marcus has an alibi. Then we find more evidence. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Marcus has done this before. Multiple times. That means multiple victims, multiple witnesses, multiple chances for him to have made mistakes. Aretha gave me files going back 12 years. Somewhere in those files is the proof we need. We reached the police station, a squat brick building that looked almost abandoned at this hour. Only a few lights were on. I parked, and we sat there for a moment. Once we go in there, this becomes official, Daniel said. No going back. There's already no going back, Natalie pointed out. They threatened to kill you. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. I see you went to the police station. Smart move. Won't help. Sheriff Bradley's brother-in-law is Marcus's insurance adjuster. Funny how these small towns work, isn't it? No one will believe you. No one will help you. You're alone. I stared at the message, feeling the trap closing around us. The sheriff couldn't be trusted. The insurance company couldn't be trusted. Marcus had connections throughout Millbrook Falls. Change of plans, I said, starting the car again. We're not going to the local police. Then where? Daniel asked. State Police, Eugene. We'll drive there tonight, file reports with investigators who aren't connected to Marcus. And on the way, we'll make copies of everything and send them to the FBI, the State Insurance Fraud Division, and every news outlet in Oregon. That's going to make Marcus desperate, Natalie warned. Good, I said, pulling out of the parking lot. Desperate people make mistakes, and I'm counting on Marcus to make a big one. As we drove through the dark streets of Millbrook Falls, heading for the highway, I saw headlights appear in my rearview mirror. A dark SUV, keeping pace with us. We're being followed, I said quietly. Daniel turned to look. That's Kyle Brenner's vehicle. Aretha showed me a photo. The SUV accelerated, pulling closer. Too close. Hold on, I said, pressing the gas pedal down. We had 2 hours until we reached Eugene. 2 hours to stay ahead of Marcus's enforcer. 2 hours to get help before the threats became reality. I'd spent 66 years being careful, being cautious, being safe. Tonight, I was going to learn what it meant to be hunted. The SUV stayed on us for 15 miles, its headlights burning in my rearview mirror like twin accusations. My hands ached from gripping the steering wheel, but I didn't dare ease up on the gas. Daniel sat rigid in the passenger seat, his phone in his hand, finger hovering over 911. Why aren't they doing anything? Natalie asked from the back seat. They're just following. They're waiting to see where we go, I said. If we lead them to Eugene, to the state police, they'll know our plan. They might try to stop us before we get there. So what do? I made a decision. We don't go to Eugene. Not yet. Mom, think about it, Daniel. Even if we make it to the state police, even if we file reports and hand over Aretha's evidence, what happens then? They investigate, which takes weeks or months. Meanwhile, Marcus knows we're coming for him, so he destroys evidence, intimidates witnesses, maybe disappears entirely. We'll have shown our hand for nothing. Then what's your plan? Natalie demanded. We make Marcus think he's won, I said. And while he's celebrating, we finish building the case against him. I took the next exit, heading not toward Eugene but back toward Millbrook Falls. The SUV followed, hanging back a bit now, probably confused by our change of direction. Call Mayor Herman's emergency line, I told Daniel. Tell her we need to move the meeting to tonight. Tell her it's urgent, that we have evidence of a crime in progress. It's 9:30 at night. Do it. While Daniel made the call, I called Sheriff Bradley directly, putting it on speaker. He answered on the third ring, sounding wary. Mrs. Albright, little late for a phone call. Sheriff, I need to report a crime. My son and I are being followed by a vehicle registered to Kyle Brenner. We've received death threats tonight, and we have evidence that Marcus Whitfield has been involved in multiple counts of insurance fraud and arson. There was a pause. Those are serious allegations. Do you have proof? Yes. And I know your brother-in-law works for Marcus's insurance company. I know you might be compromised. That's why I'm also calling the state police, the FBI, and every news outlet I can reach. But I'm giving you a chance to do the right thing first. Another pause. Longer this time. Where are you now? Headed back to Millbrook Falls. The mayor has agreed to an emergency meeting at her office. I expect you to be there, Sheriff. 10 o'clock. If you're not there, I'll know whose side you're on. I hung up before he could respond. That was a bluff, Natalie said. We don't have enough evidence for the FBI. Not yet, but we will by 10 o'clock. I handed Natalie my phone. Aretha Harmon's number is in my recent calls. Call her. Tell her we need her in Millbrook Falls tonight with every piece of documentation she has. Tell her to bring copies. Multiple copies. Joanna? She's an hour away? Then she needs to start driving now. While Natalie made the call, I kept driving, my mind working through the pieces of the puzzle. Marcus thought he had all the advantages. The money, the connections, the evidence planted against Daniel. But he'd made mistakes. Multiple mistakes. Over multiple years. And I was betting that his arrogance had made him sloppy. The SUV was still behind us, but farther back now. Either they were reporting our movements to Marcus, or they were waiting for new orders. Aretha's coming, Natalie reported. She's scared, but she's coming. She says she has more than what was on the USB drive. Original documents, bank statements, emails with timestamps. Good. Tell her to meet us at the mayor's office, and tell her to call James Patterson on the way. Marcus's lawyer? Why? Because I want him there too. I want everyone in one room where they can't hide behind lawyers and phone calls and carefully constructed alibis. Daniel had finished his call with the mayor. She agreed to meet us, but she's not happy. Said this better be legitimate or she'll have us arrested for harassment. It's legitimate, I assured him. We reached Millbrook Falls at 9:45. The SUV had dropped back, no longer following directly, but I knew Kyle Brenner was still out there, watching. I parked in front of City Hall, a renovated Victorian house that served as both the mayor's office and the town administrative center. Mayor Catherine Herman met us at the door, dressed in casual clothes but with her hair and makeup perfect. She was 58, ambitious, and smart. Exactly the kind of person who would understand what Marcus's crimes could do to her political career if she was seen as connected to him. Mrs. Albright, Mr. Albright, Ms. Albright. She nodded to each of us. I have 20 minutes. Start talking. We need to wait for a few more people, I said. I didn't agree to a town hall meeting. Sheriff Bradley is coming, as is Aretha Harmon, who has evidence of crimes committed by Marcus Whitfield. And I asked Mr. James Patterson to join us as well. The mayor's expression hardened. You're accusing Marcus Whitfield of crimes? The same Marcus Whitfield who donated $15,000 to my campaign? The same Marcus Whitfield who's committed insurance fraud at least 4 times in the past 12 years? Who burned down his own restaurant 2 nights ago and framed my son for it? Who's currently threatening to kill all 3 of us if we don't keep quiet? I met her eyes steadily. And I'm giving you the chance to distance yourself from him before this becomes public knowledge. She studied me for a long moment. Come inside. We filed into her office, a spacious room with a large desk and several chairs arranged in a semicircle. The mayor sat behind her desk and we took seats facing her. Through the window, I could see the street, dark and quiet, except for the occasional passing car. Sheriff Bradley arrived at 10:02, his expression guarded. Mrs. Albright. Mayor Herman. What's this about? We're waiting for 2 more people, I said. Aretha Harmon arrived 7 minutes later, carrying a briefcase that looked heavy with documents. She was breathing hard like she'd run from her car. When she saw me, relief flooded her face. Joanna, I brought everything. Everything? The mayor asked sharply. Aretha set the briefcase on the desk. 12 years of evidence showing Marcus Whitfield's pattern of insurance fraud, arson, and embezzlement. Bank statements, emails, recorded conversations, insurance claims, fire investigation reports. Everything I've been collecting since I divorced him. The sheriff stepped forward. Mrs. Harmon, why didn't you bring this to the police years ago? I did. You dismissed me as a bitter ex-wife. Her voice was sharp. Now maybe you'll listen. James Patterson arrived last, at 10:15. He looked annoyed and confused. Mrs. Albright, what's the meaning of... He stopped when he saw the sheriff and the mayor. What is this? This, I said, standing up, is the end of Marcus Whitfield's career as a con artist. I'd spent the drive back to Millbrook Falls thinking through every detail, every piece of evidence, every connection. Now, standing in that office with all the key players assembled, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was it. The moment everything would either come together or fall apart. Mayor Herman, Sheriff Bradley, Mr. Patterson, I'm going to tell you a story. And at the end of it, you're each going to have to make a choice about what kind of people you want to be. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the mayor's computer, projecting the screen onto the wall. The first image was the recording device I'd brought to Marcus's office earlier. When we met with Marcus and Mr. Patterson tonight, I recorded the entire conversation. Here's what they offered my son. Plead guilty to mental instability in exchange for signing over his insurance claim to Marcus. 30 days in a psychiatric facility and $800,000 transferred to Marcus's control. I played the recording. The room filled with Marcus's voice, smooth and manipulative, describing how Daniel needed help and how he would manage the insurance money during Daniel's treatment. That's not illegal, Patterson protested. We were trying to help. By having him declared mentally incompetent? By getting power of attorney over his assets? I switched to the next image, the forged insurance documents. These signatures aren't Daniel's. I emailed high-resolution scans to a forensic document examiner in Eugene, an old colleague of Robert's. The formal report will be ready tomorrow, but over the phone, she shared a preliminary opinion. The signatures appeared traced, not written naturally. Likely forgery. Patterson's face went pale. But that's just the beginning, I continued. Aretha, show them the Portland file. Aretha pulled out a folder and handed it to the mayor. Marcus owned a restaurant in Portland 5 years ago. It burned down under suspicious circumstances. The insurance investigator recommended denying the claim, but it was paid anyway. $1.2 million. Who authorized the payment? The sheriff asked. Aretha pulled out another document. Andrew Bradley, Senior Claims Adjuster for Pacific Northwest Insurance. Your brother-in-law, Sheriff. The room went silent. Sheriff Bradley's face turned red. My brother-in-law is a respected professional who's taken bribes from Marcus Whitfield for years. I pulled up bank records on the screen. Aretha documented wire transfers from Marcus to Andrew Bradley. Small amounts, always under $10,000 to avoid reporting requirements. But they add up. Over 5 years, Andrew Bradley received nearly $80,000 from Marcus. The mayor leaned forward, studying the documents. If this is real, this is fraud on a massive scale. It gets worse, I said. Daniel, tell them about the embezzlement. Daniel pulled out the accountant's report we'd compiled over the past 3 months. Marcus has been skimming money from Ember and Oak since we opened. Small amounts from vendor payments, fake receipts, inflated supply costs. My accountant estimates he stole over $200,000 in 3 years. And when Daniel confronted him, I added, Marcus decided to eliminate the problem. Not by killing Daniel, that would be too obvious, but by destroying the restaurant, collecting the insurance money, and framing Daniel for the arson. Daniel goes to prison. Marcus walks away with everything. I played the recorded conversation Aretha had given me, the one where Marcus and J.P., James Patterson, discussed the plan in detail. Patterson stood up abruptly. That recording is illegally obtained. It's not admissible. Maybe not in court, the mayor said coldly, but it's admissible in the court of public opinion. And my political career. There's more, I said. I pulled out a piece of paper I'd been saving, my ace in the hole. This morning, I received a threatening phone call. The caller said if I didn't stop investigating, I'd have an accident. That elderly people living alone in the woods have accidents all the time. You can't prove that was Marcus, Patterson said. No, but I can prove who made the call. I held up my phone. I have a recording of the call, and I had the number traced. It belongs to Kyle Brenner, who's on Marcus's payroll. Kyle has a criminal record: assault, intimidation, breaking and entering. And he's been following us tonight in his SUV. In fact, I walked to the window and pointed. He's parked across the street right now. Everyone rushed to the window. Sure enough, the dark SUV sat in the shadows across from City Hall, its engine running. Sheriff, the mayor said quietly, I think you need to bring Mr. Brenner in for questioning. But before the sheriff could move, my phone buzzed. A call from Marcus. I put it on speaker. Joanna? Marcus's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. You think you're very clever, don't you? I think I'm a 66-year-old woman who's tired of watching bullies win, I said. You've made a serious mistake. Whatever you think you've accomplished tonight, whatever little show you've put on for the mayor and the sheriff, it won't matter. I have lawyers. I have money. I have connections you can't imagine. You had connections, I corrected. Past tense. Because earlier tonight, I already sent copies of every document Aretha collected, every recording I made, and every piece of evidence we've compiled to the FBI, the state police, the insurance fraud division, and 3 different news outlets. By morning, Marcus, everyone in Oregon will know what you are. Silence on the other end. Then, you're lying. Am I? Check your email. I sent you copies too. I wanted you to see exactly how thoroughly you've been exposed. I heard typing, then a sharp intake of breath. You see, I continued, my voice steady and calm. You made a mistake when you assumed I was just a frightened old woman who'd do anything to protect her son. You forgot that mothers are dangerous when their children are threatened. And you especially forgot that some of us spent our lives learning patience, learning to plan, learning to wait for the right moment to strike. This isn't over, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Yes, it is. Sheriff Bradley is about to arrest Kyle Brenner for making terroristic threats. The FBI will be investigating you and James Patterson for conspiracy and fraud. Andrew Bradley will lose his job and probably face charges. And my son will be cleared of all suspicion in the restaurant fire. You can't prove I set that fire. Actually, Daniel spoke up, we can. After I left the police station this morning, I went back to my apartment. I have a security camera in the hallway, something Natalie insisted I install after the divorce. It shows you entering my apartment at 9:30 the night of the fire. You were only inside for 10 minutes, just long enough to steal the gas can from my storage unit and plant your accelerant. The timestamp proves you were there before the fire started. The lie was perfect. We didn't have any such footage. But Marcus couldn't know that. And the doubt in his silence told me he was frantically trying to remember if there had been cameras, if he'd been caught. That's impossible, he said finally. There are no cameras in that building. Aren't there? I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. Are you sure? Sure enough to bet your freedom on it? Another long silence. Then Marcus hung up. Mayor Herman turned to Sheriff Bradley. Sheriff, I believe you have several arrests to make. Yes, ma'am. He pulled out his radio. Dispatch, I need backup at City Hall. Prepare to bring in Kyle Brenner for questioning. And put out a bolo for Marcus Whitfield. Add James Patterson to that, I said. He's been part of this conspiracy from the beginning. Patterson started backing toward the door. I'm leaving. You can't hold me. Actually, Natalie said, stepping in front of the door, there's something I should mention. I'm not just Daniel's ex-wife. I'm also an attorney. And about an hour ago, I filed an emergency motion with the county court requesting a temporary restraining order against both Marcus Whitfield and James Patterson on behalf of my client, Daniel Albright. That restraining order was granted 20 minutes ago, which means if you leave this building, Mr. Patterson, you'll be in violation of a court order. Patterson's face went white. You can't do that. I just did. Natalie pulled out her phone, showing him the digital copy of the restraining order. You're both ordered to stay at least 500 feet from Daniel, Joanna, and me until a full hearing can be held. Given that you're currently in the same room as us, you're technically already in violation. I'd suggest you stay put until the sheriff can sort this out. It was beautiful. Natalie had been working the legal angles while I worked the evidence angles, and together we'd trapped them completely. Through the window, I saw 3 police cars pulling up, their lights flashing. Officers surrounded Kyle Brenner's SUV. There was a brief confrontation. Then Brenner was pulled from the vehicle and handcuffed. Mrs. Albright, the mayor said, I think you and I need to have a longer conversation tomorrow about Marcus, about his donations to my campaign, and about how to make sure something like this never happens again. I'd be happy to, I said. Sheriff Bradley approached me, his expression conflicted. I didn't know about my brother-in-law. I swear to you I had no idea he was involved in this. Maybe not, I said. But you should have listened when Aretha came to you years ago. You dismissed her because it was easier than investigating someone with money and connections. He nodded slowly. You're right. I'm sorry. As the police escorted Patterson out of the office, he'd be held for questioning about the conspiracy. And as units were dispatched to locate Marcus, I felt the adrenaline finally start to drain from my body. I sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. Daniel sat beside me, taking my hand. Mom, when did you plan all this? The recordings, the document examiner, sending everything to the FBI? I didn't sleep much last night, I admitted. I spent most of it researching Marcus, making calls, arranging for the document analysis. I knew we'd only get one chance to expose him, so I had to make sure every piece was in place. You were always 3 steps ahead, Natalie said admiringly. The recording at his office, Aretha's evidence, the security camera bluff. You played him perfectly. I just did what any mother would do, I said. I protected my child. But even as I said it, even as I felt the relief of knowing Marcus would face justice, I couldn't shake a nagging feeling. Marcus had hung up too quickly. He hadn't fought hard enough. For a man who'd spent 12 years successfully evading justice, his surrender felt wrong. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Well played, Joanna. But did you really think it would be that easy? Check the restaurant site. Now. I showed the message to Daniel. His face went pale. The restaurant. He wouldn't. Sheriff, I called out. We need units at the Ember and Oak site, now. Why? What's happening? I think Marcus is destroying evidence, or planting more. The sheriff grabbed his radio, but before he could speak, we heard an explosion in the distance. Everyone rushed to the window. On the horizon, maybe 2 miles away, flames lit up the night sky. Not where the restaurant had been. That site was already destroyed. Somewhere else. That's the county records building, the sheriff said, his voice hollow, where all the property deeds and business filings are stored. I closed my eyes. Of course. Marcus's final move. If he was going down, he'd take all the evidence with him. Business records, property transfers, anything that could be used to trace his crimes over the years. He's burning it all, I whispered. But then I smiled. Because Marcus had made one final fatal mistake. He'd forgotten that Aretha had already digitized everything. The county records building burned for 3 hours before firefighters could contain it. By dawn, it was nothing but a smoking shell. Decades of paper documents reduced to ash. Marcus had been thorough. I'd give him that. If he couldn't escape justice, he'd at least try to take the evidence with him. But he'd underestimated me one final time. I stood in my kitchen at 6 a.m., brewing coffee for the FBI agents who'd arrived from Portland an hour earlier. Special Agent Linda Reeves sat at my table with her partner, Agent Stephen Hall, no relation to Marcus Whitfield, thankfully, reviewing the flash drives Aretha had given them. Mrs. Albright, Agent Reeves said, looking up from her laptop, these documents are extraordinary. Bank records, insurance claims, correspondence. This is years of evidence meticulously organized. Aretha Harmon collected it, I said, pouring coffee. I just knew when to use it. The timing of last night's confrontation was strategic, Agent Hall observed. You gathered everyone in one place, exposed the conspiracy publicly, and forced Whitfield into a desperate move that only made him look more guilty. Marcus is a planner, I said, sitting down across from them. But planners get comfortable with their patterns. They stop expecting opposition. I counted on that. My phone rang. Daniel, calling from his apartment where he'd finally gone to sleep around 3 a.m. Mom, have you seen the news? I picked up the remote and turned on the small TV in the corner. The local morning show was leading with the story. Arson investigation expands. Local businessman sought in multiple fires. Marcus's photo filled the screen, and the crawl beneath listed charges. Insurance fraud. Arson, conspiracy, forgery, embezzlement. They found him an hour ago, Agent Reeves said. Trying to cross into California. Highway Patrol pulled him over for speeding, ran his plates, saw the bolo we'd issued. He's in custody now. Relief flooded through me so powerfully, I had to set down my coffee cup. It's really over? The arrest is just the beginning. But yes, Mrs. Albright. Thanks to your investigation and Mrs. Harmon's documentation, we have enough evidence to charge Marcus Whitfield with multiple felonies across 3 counties. James Patterson is cooperating. He's already given us details about how the conspiracy worked in exchange for a reduced sentence. And Andrew Bradley has been suspended pending investigation. Daniel arrived 20 minutes later, followed shortly by Natalie. We sat together in my living room while the FBI agents finished their initial interviews. Through the window, I could see the morning sun painting the trees gold, the same trees where someone had photographed us just yesterday. It felt like a lifetime ago. Mrs. Albright, Agent Reeves said, closing her laptop. I have to ask, what made you so certain Marcus was behind the fire? Most people would have believed the evidence against their son. Because I know my son, I said simply. Daniel has his flaws. He can be stubborn. He prioritizes work over relationships sometimes. He's not always good at asking for help. But he's not a criminal. He's not capable of burning down his own dream out of greed or desperation. I looked at Daniel. And because I raised him to tell me the truth, even when it's hard. When he showed up at my door covered in ash and gasoline, He could have lied about what happened. But he didn't. He asked me to vouch for him, yes, but he didn't claim to be innocent. He just said he didn't do it. There's a difference. Daniel's eyes were wet. I'm sorry I put you through this, Mom. I should have seen what Marcus was doing earlier. I should have— You trusted your partner, I interrupted gently. That's not a flaw, Daniel. That's being human. Marcus exploited that trust, just like he's exploited dozens of people over the years. But that says something about him, not about you. Natalie spoke up quietly. Joanna, when you called me yesterday, I almost didn't come. After the divorce, after how things ended between Daniel and me, I thought I'd moved on. I told myself I didn't care what happened to him. But you came anyway, I said. Because when you described what was happening, I recognized the pattern, the gaslighting, the manipulation, making Daniel question his own memory and judgment. I've seen it in my family law practice 100 times. And I realized that even though our marriage didn't work, Daniel didn't deserve to be destroyed by someone like Marcus. She turned to Daniel. We have things to talk about. Not about getting back together. That ship sailed, and we both know it. But about closure. About forgiving each other for the ways we hurt each other. About being better people going forward. Daniel nodded. I'd like that. The FBI agents left around 8, promising to keep us informed as the investigation progressed. Sheriff Bradley stopped by at 9:30, looking like he hadn't slept. Mrs. Albright, I owe you an apology. Several apologies, actually. You do, I agreed. But you can start making amends by ensuring this never happens again. Small-town law enforcement can't afford to give wealthy criminals the benefit of the doubt just because they're charming or connected. You're right. He turned his hat in his hands. My brother-in-law resigned this morning. He'll be facing charges for accepting bribes and insurance fraud. My sister is devastated, but she says she suspected something wasn't right for years. She just didn't want to believe it. That's the power of people like Marcus, I said. They make you doubt your own instincts. They make you feel foolish for questioning them. After the sheriff left, it was just the 3 of us again. Daniel, Natalie, and me. We sat in the living room drinking coffee and processing everything that had happened over the past 48 hours. The restaurant is gone, Daniel said finally. Even if I get the insurance money, even if my name is cleared, I can't rebuild Ember and Oak. Too many memories. Too much damage. So what will you do? I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. For 3 years, that restaurant was my entire identity. I sacrificed my marriage for it, spent every waking hour there, poured everything I had into making it succeed. And in one night, it was gone. Maybe that's not entirely a bad thing, Natalie said carefully. Maybe this is a chance to figure out who Daniel Albright is when he's not defined by his business. I'm 42 years old, Daniel said. I should have figured that out by now. I'm 66, I reminded him, and I'm still figuring it out. That's life, sweetheart. We keep learning, keep growing, keep adapting. The alternative is stagnation. My phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Aretha Harmon. Joanna, I heard they arrested Marcus. Thank you for having the courage to do what I couldn't. For the first time in 10 years, I feel free. If you ever need anything at all, please call me. You gave me my life back. Aretha, I showed the email to Daniel and Natalie. You see, this wasn't just about saving you, Daniel. It was about stopping someone who'd hurt people for years and would have kept hurting people if we'd stayed silent. Over the next 3 days, the full scope of Marcus's crimes emerged. The FBI discovered he'd operated similar schemes in Nevada and Washington before moving to Oregon. At least 6 businesses over 15 years, all burned down for insurance money, all with partners or co-owners who'd been positioned to take the fall. Most had paid settlements to avoid prosecution, not realizing they were giving up their rights while Marcus walked away with millions. Daniel's name was formally cleared on the 4th day, when the fire investigators' final report concluded that the evidence against him had been planted and that Marcus Whitfield was the primary suspect in the arson. The district attorney issued a public apology, and the local newspaper ran a front-page story about the conspiracy. But it was the small moments that mattered most. Natalie and Daniel meeting for coffee, talking for 3 hours, and emerging with a tentative friendship neither had expected. Daniel helping me repair the furnace, which really had been acting up, and laughing together when we discovered I'd accidentally tripped the breaker, causing the whole emergency that had started this nightmare. Patricia Hendricks stopping by with casseroles and gossip, now treating me like some kind of local hero. "Joanna Albright, who knew you had it in you?" she'd said, eyes shining with admiration. And Mayor Herman calling to ask if I'd consider serving on the town's business ethics committee. "We need people who aren't afraid to ask hard questions," she'd said. I declined, politely. I'd had enough drama for one lifetime. 2 weeks after Marcus's arrest, Daniel and I sat on my porch watching the sunset. The insurance company had released his share of the claim, $800,000 minus the amount already spent on the business. After legal fees and debts, he'd have about $400,000 left. "I'm thinking about going back to school," he said suddenly. "Maybe getting a teaching degree. I always enjoyed training new kitchen staff, helping them learn the craft." "You'd be good at that," I said. "It wouldn't be as prestigious as owning a restaurant. Wouldn't make as much money. But would it make you happy?" He thought about it. "Yeah, I think it would." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Daniel said, "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course. When I showed up at your door that morning, covered in ash, asking you to lie for me, did you ever doubt me? Even for a second?" I considered the question carefully. I doubted the situation. I doubted my ability to help you. But I never doubted you. You're my son, Daniel. I've known you since before you were born. I know your character, your heart, your integrity. Marcus Whitfield couldn't change that with all his money and manipulation. What if I had been guilty? Then I would have helped you face the consequences with dignity. I would have gotten you the best lawyer I could afford. I would have visited you in prison and loved you through it. Because that's what mothers do. We love our children even when they fail, even when they fall, even when they make terrible mistakes. His voice was thick with emotion. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not," I agreed, smiling. "But you're stuck with me anyway." A car pulled into the driveway, Natalie's sedan. She got out carrying a bottle of wine and a box from the bakery in town. "I brought dessert," she called out. "And wine." I figured we should celebrate the fact that we all survived Marcus Whitfield. We moved inside, and I set out plates while Natalie poured wine and Daniel opened the box to reveal a chocolate cake with "To New Beginnings" written in icing. "To new beginnings," Natalie said, raising her glass. We clinked glasses, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not just relief that the nightmare was over, but something deeper. Pride, maybe. Or purpose. For 66 years, I'd been someone's daughter, then someone's wife, then someone's mother. I defined myself by relationships, by the roles I played in other people's lives. And those roles had been important, fulfilling, meaningful. But in the past 2 weeks, I'd discovered something else. I'd discovered that Joanna Albright, not Joanna the mother, not Joanna the widow, just Joanna, was stronger, smarter, and more capable than she'd ever imagined. "I've been thinking," I said as we ate cake, "about what to do with this farmhouse. It's too big for one person, too isolated. Too many memories of your father, Daniel." "Are you thinking of selling?" Daniel asked, concerned. "No, I'm thinking of transforming it. There's a women's shelter in Eugene that's always overcrowded. What if we converted this place into transitional housing? Women escaping abuse, getting back on their feet, learning to trust themselves again. Aretha could help. She knows what that journey is like." Natalie set down her fork. "Joanna, that's a beautiful idea, but it's a huge undertaking. The renovations alone would cost money I don't have," I finished. "But you know who does have money? The state of Oregon, which offers grants for rural housing initiatives and various nonprofits that fund domestic violence services. I've been researching." Daniel laughed. "Of course you have. Mom, when did you have time to research housing grants?" "At 3 in the morning, when I couldn't sleep. I've been having trouble sleeping anyway. Might as well use the time productively." We talked through the evening about possibilities, about logistics, about what it would take to turn my quiet farmhouse into a place of healing and renewal for women who needed it. By the time Natalie left around 10, we had the skeleton of a plan. After Daniel left too, he'd found a small apartment in town and was slowly rebuilding his life. I stood in my kitchen cleaning up the dishes. Through the window, I could see the trees that had seemed so threatening just weeks ago. Now they were just trees again, standing sentinel over land that had seen both heartbreak and hope. My phone buzzed. A text from Aretha. "Joanna, I heard about your housing idea. I want to help. Not just with advice, but with funding. Marcus took a lot from me, but I got a good divorce settlement. Let me use that money to help other women escape men like him. Let me turn something terrible into something good." I smiled, typing back a quick acceptance and thanks. As I finished the dishes and prepared for bed, I thought about everything that had happened. About Daniel's desperate arrival in the middle of the night. About Marcus's carefully constructed web of lies. About the fear, the threats, the desperate race to gather evidence before it was too late. But most of all, I thought about the moment in the mayor's office when I'd laid out the case against Marcus, when I'd revealed that I'd been 3 steps ahead the entire time, when I'd shown him that underestimating a 66-year-old woman had been his fatal mistake. People think age makes you weak. They think that wrinkles and gray hair mean your best days are behind you, that you're no longer relevant or capable or dangerous. Marcus Whitfield had thought that. He'd dismissed me as a frightened old woman who would do whatever it took to protect her son, even if it meant staying silent. He'd been right about the first part. I would do whatever it took to protect Daniel. But he'd been catastrophically wrong about the second part. I wasn't going to stay silent. I was going to fight. And I was going to win. Because age isn't weakness. Age is wisdom. Age is patience. Age is knowing how to wait for the right moment. How to gather your resources. How to strike when your enemy least expects it. Age is power. You just have to be smart enough to use it. I turned off the kitchen lights and headed upstairs, feeling more at peace than I had in years. The farmhouse was quiet around me, solid and enduring, just like I intended to be. Tomorrow I'd start making calls about the housing project. I'd reach out to Aretha, to Natalie, to the nonprofits in Eugene. I'd begin the work of transforming this place from a monument to the past into a foundation for the future. But tonight, I would sleep. And I would dream not of fires and threats and desperate midnight confessions, but of the women who would someday walk through my front door, frightened, uncertain, but ready to rebuild their lives, just like I had rebuilt mine. The ashes of the past would nourish the growth of tomorrow. And from the ruins of Marcus Whitfield's greed and Daniel's shattered dreams, something new and strong and good would emerge. That was the real victory. Not just stopping a criminal or saving my son, but discovering that even at 66, even after loss and grief and quiet years of solitude, I still had the power to change the world, one life at a time, starting with my own. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.